Good morning. I'm glad to be here this morning. In fact, I'm also glad not to be at your sites this morning because I guarantee no work is being done. And I know by your laughter that you agree with me. I've been in the shoes when I lose my registrar or various people and someone's asking for a records request, somebody's asking for an attendance report, or a new student comes in and we say, wait till Wednesday. Because, but I'm glad you're here and I'm glad I'm here. And I want to talk about a term, engineering success. Success is not an accidental thing. It's very intentional. In fact, it's intentional in that it relates to what Marty was talking about, directed activity. It's not accidental. We actually intend for it to happen. We have to engineer it. You have to be the architects of success in your building. In order to do so, I'm going to talk about 4 things I absolutely love. So I'm going to talk about TIME as an acronym. To begin with, technology. I want to talk about technology, I want to talk about innovation, I want to talk about motivation, and finally education. Engineering success is about time. To begin with, the world as we know it is changing. It's a frightening thing out there, the way that technology is just speeding along. My son is 7 years old. In 11 years, he will graduate in the year 2023. In 58 years, he will retire in the year 2070. In the 47 years in between, he will have to know how to live and work in a knowledge economy, and it's our job to prepare him for that. However, I still have 11 years to get him ready. The problem is, we don't know what the world's going to look like in 5 years. Or next year. Has me a little bit worried. Technology is developing at an ever-increasing rate. George Moore, co-founder of Intel, in 1965 said or predicted that technology, the rate of computing processing power, will double every 18 months. You saw that first computer, for example. 18 months. He's been right every 18 months since 1965, and technology continues to go faster and faster and faster. For example, even 5 years ago, could you have predicted the ubiquity of Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google+, or just basic Google, Pinterest, the new thing everyone's talking about? Could you have predicted the ubiquity of smartphones and tablets, apps, cloud computing? We don't save things to our devices anymore. We save it to the cloud. It's out there somewhere. In fact, the next 10 years will make the last 10 years pale in comparison. But the funny thing is, depending on your perspective, it will either fascinate you or frighten you. But I guarantee all the students in your building are fascinated by it. Remember when life was simpler? Every year, Beloit College in Wisconsin, in Cliff's Stomping Grounds, puts out a list they call the Mindset List. And the Mindset List is an opportunity for the staff to understand the incoming freshmen and the way they view the world. The incoming freshmen this year at Beloit College are this year's also graduating seniors. How do they think of the world? Remember when Amazon was a river in South America and on an online store you could buy just about everything? Remember when LBJ meant Lyndon Baines Johnson and not LeBron James? Remember when there was no such thing as Facebook or Google, or there was no internet, or we had video stores? Remember video stores? I think there's a couple around still. Remember when no one had cell phones and people wore watches, and now we don't need to? Don't touch that dial. What dial? This year's graduating senior class the same class as this year's incoming college freshmen, have no understanding of this world. That's why Beloit College comes up with the mindset list. The world is changing. Evidence of our changing society. Of all the adults that use the internet, 96% of them have email. 96%. However, only 74% of teens use email, and most of them only do so to communicate with the adults that use email. They're not connecting with each other. They have other means of doing so. It's much easier to update your status, pin something, tweet, text, etc. And why is that? Because email is actually just too slow. I have to wait for you to log in, read it, and then respond. But a tweet, or a text, or a private message, or an instant message, or a status update is instant. In fact, there's so much information out there. People ask about, well, I've got information overload. There's absolutely too much. I can't know everything. Well, you know what? Clay Shirky, author and professor at NYU, says, no, stop thinking about information overload. You're looking at it wrong. We've had information overload for centuries. Your parents and grandparents and great-great-great-grandparents have always had more books than they could possibly read. The problem is filter failure. Instead of trying to know and do everything, you got to be very selective in what you pick. Look at all the offerings presented at this conference. You can't go to all of them. It would be impossible. But which ones apply to you? Filter failure is what we need to think about, not information overload. Look at smartphone and tablet ubiquity. Again, more evidence of our changing society. Again, apps, 24/7 computing, and then keeping information in the cloud. Our society is becoming more and more mobile. I think the statistic that I heard was of this year's attendees that we know about, more than half of you have some kind of smartphone at your disposal. More than half of you. Whereas last year it was about 30%. It's nearly doubled in just a span of a year. Look how fast it's growing. This year, app-driven tablets and smartphones have outsold desktops and laptops for the first time in history. More of us are buying smartphones and tablets than we are laptops and desktops. Every single day, 18 million apps are downloaded from Apple. 18 million today, and yesterday, and the day before. And 11 million are downloaded for Android products. And over 25 billion apps have been downloaded from the Apple Store. Where was this a couple years ago? You see how fast it's changing? And here's the interesting thing. Of smartphone use, 60% is new activity. In other words, less than half of our phone use is as a phone. 60% is apps, maps, games, the web, or in my case, a timer. 40% is still the traditional texting, calling, or email. This has prompted a new term in schools, bring your own technology. Even a few years ago, we were trying to put a digital camera in the hands of every student. Well, now they're bringing their own. They're bringing their own cameras. And a lot of you still have those policies where we're trying to restrict kids bringing cell phones to school. Good luck with that. Good luck with the parents that say, I paid for that cell phone, he's going to carry it with him. Well, I don't envy you, nor do I envy myself when I have those conversations with parents. Anyway, these trends are becoming known as SOLO-MO. They are social, they are local, and they are mobile. Internet analysts Mary Meeker and John Doerr talk about this, that trends are becoming more and more social as you see your sites, your schools' information going social with Facebook. and other ways to update parents. Can you consider your site solo-mo? Can your parents access your web page through their smartphone or tablet because that's what they're using? Or is it just slow-mo? Consider the potential for education. It's ubiquitous. This stuff's everywhere. Get used to it. It's actually affordable, believe it or not. And schools are spending more money on new technology than they are on the old technology that kids are bringing themselves. It's personal. In fact, there's another term that Mary Meeker and John Doerr talk about that discusses the importance of these new achievements in solo-mo, and that's gamification. Almost everything out there has a game of some kind that draws people in to use, and that is a huge feature of this new technology. And then finally, access to everything, everywhere in the cloud. Now, so what does this mean? It means you can reject it. The world is speeding ahead, but I don't care. I'm not going to pay attention to it. That's going to cause undue mental strain. You're not going to be prepared for the world that's emerging as we see it. It means you can accept it and just try to keep pace begrudgingly, or it means you can embrace it. It means you can become a leader in your site and embrace the new technology because look at your parents and students and the way they're doing it. They're asking schools to do more every day. In fact, when I go to the exhibitors hall and I see all the things that are available, I'm impressed. Wow, we can do that with our technology? That's impressive. That's great. So embrace it. Embracing it's a very innovative thing to do. So the second thing I want to talk about is innovation. Innovation has a few characteristics. It's more than a trend in business. It's an actual mindset. It's a way we think. It's very messy, and it's collaborative, and it's cyclical, and actually it's rooted in failure, believe it or not. A friend of mine is a senior manager at Disney. His name's Topher White, and he talks about innovation as a funnel. Man, most textbooks show it this way, that you have a bunch of ideas. Those ideas kind of get pulled into a funnel, and then over a series of processes, the right idea comes out the end, and we win, and we move on. But he says that's not what it looks like at all. This is the theoretical version of innovation. The ideas, the process, and the product or the innovation. What it really looks like, though, all those ideas are different shapes and sizes. They're not the same. They're not the same at all. They're different shapes and sizes. They have different merits. Then you break them up. You bust them into pieces. You throw them in that first stage. You blast them apart. You throw some out. And then those fragments and bits and pieces get narrowed even further. And then even further. And sometimes you have to grab that idea that you were considering the first time but got left out, and now it's a good idea for the end, and you pull it in. And what you're left with is this patchwork of ideas that actually gets thrown in back at the beginning, and it starts all over. That's what real innovation looks like. It's collaborative. It's a little bit mine, and it's a little bit yours. It's team-oriented. We work together. Teamwork is innovative. Individual evaluation, but group results. And it's strengths-based. If you or your site haven't done the Strengths Finder or the strengths-based book, I highly recommend it. There's a lot of books I could recommend. I'm not going to go into them, but the strengths-based one is great. What are you good at? Stick with what you're good at. Work on all the rest, of course. But it's strengths-based. We all have different strengths we build from our team that we incorporate. It's cyclical. And sometimes you're the guy on the top, and sometimes you're the guy on the bottom. But innovation goes over and over and over. Like this Far Side cartoon, early experiments in transportation. Sometimes you feel like this. And like the cyclical, that little patchwork ball at the end gets wrapped in and thrown back at the beginning. Innovation is rooted in failure. Now, we have to be prepared to fail. Unfortunately, in education, kids, I don't know that we teach this per se, but kids pick up on it. In fact, we all do. In a workplace, we feel like it's not okay to fail. I have to get things right the first time, or I'm a failure. I can only think of one person who gets something right the first time, and I would call them a liar. You have to get used to failure. It's going to happen. So get used to it. I'm sorry, I love that there's a Frisbee in that second one. Without that Frisbee, that picture would make no sense. Sometimes I feel like that little retriever there chasing that Frisbee and unaware of my surroundings at my own peril. Anyway, it's rooted in failure. Innovation is about being wrong or partially wrong most of the time. As long as we're right when it counts. We have to do it over and over and over. Think of it as a sandbox mode, where sometimes you have to be able to fail in order to succeed when it counts. So that when it counts, you don't have any embarrassing missteps, for example. Lots of people that we know have failed over time. Some people credit Edison with failing 1,000 times before he made the light bulb. But Edison, and I'm paraphrasing, it's hard to find his exact quote, said something to the effect of, I didn't fail 1,000 times, I found that creating the light bulb had 1,000 steps. So success and failure. Failure, this sign, I don't appreciate this sign. I don't think they're two opposite directions. I think failure is a destination on the way to success. In the words of Irish poet Samuel Beckett, it's a beautiful line. 12 simple words, 6 simple sentences, 1 great idea. Ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again, fail better. Just fail better this time. And finally, motivation. One of my favorite things to talk about. I love studying what makes us do what we do. The irony is people usually ask, why do you want to study that? But I love studying what we do. What drives us? That's one way of looking at motivation, is what drives us. And there are many, many, many theories, and I'm not going to go into hardly any of them. I'm only going to talk about 2. There are things, like we can talk about curiosity and interest and all these other things, and stereotype threat, and if I had more time I would love to talk about those. That's what I typically like to talk about. But I want to talk about 2 things. And the things I want to talk about are why we do what we do, in other words, what drives us. And the first one is called self-determination theory, but you can refer to it as drive. Daniel Pink wrote a wonderful book called Drive. Highly recommend that one as well. And it's rooted in the research of D.C. and Ryan at the University of Rochester. And self-determination theory says, or drive says, we have 3 primary needs. If these needs are met, we can conquer the world. We can do absolutely anything. And those 3 things are, number 1, autonomy. Did I choose to do this? Did I want to involve myself in this? Did I choose to be at this conference? Yes, good. That's number 1, autonomy. In the words of Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, a Holocaust survivor, he also realized something. I didn't choose to be in the Holocaust, but I can choose how I respond to any situation, any day, any time. So we have 2 kinds of autonomy. Did I choose to be involved in the activity, and did I choose to how to respond in that situation? So number 1 is autonomy. You and your workplace, students, for example, autonomy or even perceived autonomy. Number 2, competence. I can do this. I'm either good at it or I'm getting better. If I go out to shoot free throws and I consistently hit 0 out of 10, even if I chose to go do it, I'm probably not going to do it much longer. But I have to see that I'm either good at it or that I'm getting better at it. And the more we apply ourselves, the better we get, and the better we feel about it. And competence is that second primary need. And the last one is relevance. I want to do this because I value this. Do I care about what I'm doing? Do I care about this thing? Therefore, do I want to do it? So that's the first one I wanted to talk about. Drive, what pushes us. The second one is willpower. There's a lot of research that's come out just recently. Dr. Roy Baumeister from Florida State University is one of the premier researchers in willpower. And it's an amazing thing. It's actually, this is surprising, willpower is like a muscle. The more you use it, the better you get at it. And look at this picture, for example. Willpower is about I will, I won't, or I want. It's those three things. And how we interact with those things. You know what those dogs want to do, but they're not. So willpower, surprisingly, this is the fascinating thing about willpower. It actually taxes our glucose reserves in our body. So I'm going to tell you about the cookie study done at Florida State University. Two groups of people were brought into a room, not at the same time, but one group was brought in this room, and they were told to wait in this room individually. First the control, then the test group. The one group was brought in, and this room smelled like freshly baked cookies, and on a table there was a plate of chocolate chip cookies, fresh made, and there was also a bowl of radishes. One group was brought in and said, we need you to wait here, one at a time, and wait till we set up the experiment in the next room. Well, the experiment was really to make them wait in a room that smelled of delicious cookies. And then in the next room, after they waited about 15 minutes, each person went into the next room to accomplish a series of puzzles. What they didn't realize was the puzzles are impossible to solve. What we were looking for was how long it took each person before they gave up. The first group was brought in and said, don't touch the cookies, they're for something else later on, but you can have as many radishes as you want. And then they had to go into the next room and try to solve these puzzles. The second group came in and they said, help yourself to the cookies, you have as many as you want while you're waiting for us to set up this other experiment. Then they walked in. The group that was able to eat the cookies spent nearly 20 minutes on average before they gave up on the puzzle. The group that had to resist the cookies and only eat the radishes gave up after 8 minutes. When we're resisting something, we're taxing our glucose reserves. We get tired. We make too many decisions. It's easy to give up. Willpower is like a muscle. Our brain accounts for 2% of our body weight, 20% of our oxygen consumption, but 25% of our glucose consumption. We get tired. Our kids get tired. We get tired at work. We get tired in school. We get tired in our personal lives. In fact, research has shown that 25% of our waking hours is spent resisting something. Resisting the extra piece of chocolate, resisting not going to exercise, resisting going to bed earlier, watching TV, surfing the web, a text message or something. In fact, how many of you have already gotten a text message in this session? And by the way, a little non sequitur side note here, by all means, I'm not one of those guys that says turn off your phone. Because I already said your school wasn't running properly by being here. You better check those texts so that somebody knows how to do what you do when you're there. Anyway, resistance, willpower. There is a way to boost your willpower. And by the way, I'm only the messenger, so don't be angry with me. But number one, get plenty of rest. Number two, eat a balanced diet. And number three, exercise. And I understand the irony that I do none of these things. And yet, I would like to know what that would be like, but maybe I'm not curious enough. Anyway, in fact, upon being told, I have an intervention for you, and if you try this thing, your life will be better. You'll be healthier, you'll be able to resist temptation more, you'll be able to think better, and you'll feel better about life. Would you do that? Would you take that intervention? And you'd say, yeah, bring it on. I'd love to know what this is. And if you were told it's exercise, oh, well, never mind. Perhaps it's not worth it. Because that's what I say, actually. So, plenty of rest, balanced diet, and exercise. Very important to boosting willpower. After all, 28 days to make a habit, right? Just try it over and over. These are important things, and consider that picture of the dogs staring at the cat. That would be a very different picture if those dogs were tired and hungry. I guarantee it. We have a partnership with the county sheriffs, and they bring a drug dog in sometimes. And despite how amazing that little guy is, he only has 30 minutes before he's worn out. He can only sniff around and all that kind of stuff with all that stimuli for 30 minutes before he needs lots of water and about an hour or so to rest. So the point being, even dogs get tired. I don't want to compare a working like a dog scenario. But anyway, and the last one, E, education. This is our purpose. This is why we're here, right? In fact, there's no greater calling than to improve the lives of others. The definition of a nonprofit, I've read somewhere, is to increase human potential and decrease human suffering. And isn't that what we do? Abraham Maslow, who created Maslow's hierarchy, I used to teach psychology, a lot of different things before I became an administrator. Every psychology textbook I've ever seen, at the very top of Maslow's pyramid, if I asked you, most of you would say, well, yeah, the top is self-actualization, being the best I can be. But Maslow had one more level that nobody really talks about, and he developed it in the twilight of his career, just before he passed away. And he thought, no, there's something else beyond self-actualization. And it explains people like Mother Teresa and Gandhi and Martin Luther King, for example. And he called it self-transcendence. And he said, it's rising above yourself in order to help out others. In fact, he said, find yourself by losing yourself in the service of others. And that's what we do. So it's about time. Engineering success is about time. It's about technology. Our world is changing faster than any phenomenon we've ever seen in world history. And it's only going to get more quick. So embrace it. Innovation. Engage in messy, collaborative, cyclical failure in order to succeed when it counts. In other words, fail better. Motivation. Think about your autonomy, your competence, the relevance, and your willpower in order to improve education, to improve the lives of others. Again, if you strip away all that we do in education, that's really what it's about, improving the lives of others. In summary, in honor of Dr. Seuss's recent birthday, a man who did a lot for education, I feel like it wouldn't be proper if I ended a session without talking about Dr. Seuss, even for a little bit, even though his birthday was a couple weeks ago. But I wanted to quote the Lorax. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a minute.